Hi, I'm Lee Salisbury, and over the years I have directed some of the country's biggest continuing dramas and worked with some of TV's best actors and actresses and become friends with them. I want you to get to know them a bit like I do, and so welcome to Soap from the Box. So my guest today on the podcast is the fabulous Nina Wadia, who couldn't be, I don't think, any more different than your character in Eastenders, Zainab Masood, described once as Wolford's answer to Alan Sugar. Hello, Nina.
Hiya.
So, I mean, firstly, actually, as a gay man, I probably wouldn't be sat here with Zainab, would I, this close? So, obviously, you played... What we're going to do today is basically kind of spend half the time speaking about Zainab and your time in EastEnders, and then half the time speaking about you.
Okay.
Which will be more interesting, is up for debate.
Are you sure?
So, obviously, let's talk about Zainab. So, you were cast in 2007, and at the time they said she was going to be a strong-willed woman in her early 40s who owns a string of post offices. I mean, what did you think when you took on the role? What attracted you to Zainab?
Well, I remember being approached by the exec and the casting director and being told, we're looking for someone to create an Asian character that will last. And the idea is we want someone like Pauline Fowler, but funny. Now, I'd not seen EastEnders, so I'd heard, obviously, of Pauline Fowler. It's kind of, EastEnders is all permeable, isn't it? It's kind of everywhere, even if you don't watch it. So I was sent sort of tapes of Wendy Richards and Pauline Fowler, the character, and I thought, oh my gosh, grumpy old bitch, how do I make her funny? My husband said, be yourself, but that's a different story. But what, I thought about it and thought, what makes grumpy people funny? And it's the fact that they're blunt. Grumpy people are very honest. So I thought, well, if I create a character that's, hugely miserable, but if someone asks her, oh, does my bum look big in this? She'd go, yes. And then the audience would laugh because it's rude. And she'd go, what, you asked me, I told you. So that's how Zainab was born in my head.
But it wasn't your first time in EastEnders, because I read that you had a minor role playing a nurse. Do you remember the name?
Indu something, is it?
Viv.
No. It was two. There's a real story behind this that people don't know about. The first time I played her, she was called Viv something, and it was when Susan Tully.
Yeah, Michelle Fowler.
Michelle Fowler got shot. So it was one scene, and I was really nervous, and I did it as this character. Then I came back 6 months later, or something else. There was another scene, and I think it had to do with Ross Kemp was in it, I know that. And all of a sudden my name badge said Indu. So I thought, hang on a minute, not only have I changed characters, I've changed race and colour. Not that anyone would notice, to be honest, unless they look at the name badge, because I played her the same. But I remember thinking, this is so weird,
And did you get a sense then, I mean, had they watched you and remembered you years later, or was it just a chance thing?
No, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think the casting director or someone within the company had seen me in the Vagina Monologues and had gone, oh, we like the character she's created. So I think it came down that route. I could be completely wrong, I don't know, but that's where I think it came from.
So then years later, you obviously got the part of Zainab. Now, There's so much to say. So just to kind of, before we get properly into the meat of stuff, I'm going to test you a little bit to see if you can remember things about Zainab.
You do know that as an actress, I have the worst memory in the world.
And that's kind of why this might be quite funny if you don't know. So you came into the show not to make friends.
Yeah.
Can you remember who the first person you had a big feud with was on screen?
Yes, that would have been Bianca, Patsy.
Yes, Palmer.
Yes, Patsy.
Correct.
Palmer, that's right. Yes.
And your big first storyline was with Di Parish, wasn't it? Who played Denise? Because were you running the shop with her? Was the post office within the shop?
No. No.
So that's me that's totally got that wrong.
Yeah, from what I remember. No, we became friends. I know that. They decided that these two characters, would be friends, which I think they would. That's why we started working together. But I don't think it was to do with an actual kind of storyline of her owning anything or being part of a business or anything like that.
This is where you're probably knowing much better than me now. Thanks, Wikipedia, for that one.
Oh, no. I told you my memory.
But I mean, there's Di, there's, you mentioned Patsy, there's you, there's obviously, I think one of the main things about EastEnders actually is it's very amazingly known for its female characters. There's been such strong females in that show.
Yeah, it's a a real matriarchal show, but then that's British culture for you. I think British culture is very matriarchal, very similar to Indian culture that way as well. You may see the man fronting something, but it's the woman pulling all the strings for sure.
And do you think shows like EastEnders, I mean, there's a lot of its matriarchs left, Pam St Clement, Barbara, obviously, Patsy's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, will soap, because I think the big question about soap is a lot of people used to stay in it for years as actors, and now people are quick to come and go.
Yes.
Do you think it can remain the same without these matriarchs? Do you know what I mean? Without the bread and butter of it?
It's so interesting because I left 10 years ago now. So it's been a decade since I left. But if you spend a day with me on the streets, you will just go, the amount of people that come up and go, hey, when are you going back in? We really miss you. And you go, it's been 10 years. How has this happened? I don't understand. And I remember Pam St. Clement saying to me, when you do a show like EastEnders, and if they like your character, they will just not be able to let that go. That will stay with you for life. So she said, so make the character good, because it will stay with you.
Yeah.
And true, honestly, her words are coming true.
I think people who watch soap, I mean, it's like they're in your house every day. So they become friends in a way.
They do. But they also hate you. My gosh, I played, when I did the whole homophobic kind of part of the character, which I didn't know was coming my way, I realized very quickly that when people see you all the time, they genuinely associate your behavior with you as a human being. And it's horrible because you sometimes get a bit of abuse where you go, that's not me, that's my character.
Yes, yeah.
And then you'll actually have people going, well, there must be something in you to play it that way. You just go, really?
No. And that's why I feel sorry if I know the guy who plays Jeff in Corrie at the moment, who's doing the big domestic abuse storyline.
Yes.
I mean, you think it's a brave role to take on that as an actor, isn't it?
Ace did in our show,
course,
and he got a massive backlash. You get very disliked if you play a bad guy.
Yes. So back on with the quiz.
Yeah.
What did Zainab buy for the garden to prove she was not poor?
Oh, was this weird big mosaic fountain?
Yes.
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 I remember that only because it was the most painful scenes
to film. I can't remember the Masoods having a garden, apart from a front garden.
It's about 2 foot by 2 foot. But
and that's where the water feature got put, was it?
So hilarious, honestly. The whole storyline was made because Nitin wanted to smash something up with a sledgehammer. And they said, oh, what can we do? Can't make a mess in the house. Let's buy a water feature and put it in their front garden.
And talking of Nitin, obviously played your husband Masood.
Yes.
The question is, before we get to Nitin, how did Masood divorce her?
Oh, talaq.
Yes, which I didn't know about. So this is a tradition, isn't it?
Yes, it's in Muslim culture. Apparently, they, you say the 3 words for divorce, and you're divorced, you're done. And, you must never do it as a joke because it's actually quite serious and it's kind of done. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. But what a strange way to get divorced.
I know. I suppose it's cheap. So did you come in at the same time as Nitin, or was Nitin there?
No, I came in originally, and people don't know this. Originally, as far as I know, it was meant to be, when the character was thought up, a single mum with a daughter. So that's why it was just myself and Zara, who played Shabnam, who were in initially, and I was running the post office. And then as we're doing that, I was told, oh, actually, we're going to get a big family in for you. So I was like, oh. And they said, oh, we'll be auditioning some people for your husband. And then, of course, I got a text from Nitin. I don't know how he finds out anything in the world. But I got a text from Nitin, like literally minutes after I'd spoken to the casting director saying, hey, how are you? And I'm thinking, here we go. So I said, no, all good. And I thought, well, Nitin and myself have played husband and wife in so many other shows. We've worked together so much. In fact, more than my own husband. I know the man inside out. So I just thought it would be a very comfortable, easy fit if he's on the show. And the casting director loved him. So it just worked really well.
Amazing. And did you screen test together, or I suppose you worked together before?
Yeah, no, we were called into the exec's office and we had to sit and talk to them, and they sort of just kept staring at us, like seeing if we fit, like an arranged marriage. It was like really awkward arranged marriage at the BBC. And we laughed a lot together because that was the one thing I wanted to work with, someone that I knew I would laugh a lot with.
Yes, because they're long hours, aren't they, on shows like that?
Very
really
long
hours.
Yeah.
You can you can be filming from 8 till 8,
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
easily. And, the occasional sort of longer hours and that, and the occasional Saturday.
Yes.
So I wanted to be with someone that I had a rapport with, that I could just, we had a language, because we were meant to have been married for many years. So I didn't want to have to start with a new actor and it would not feel comfortable or feel right. Whereas Nitin, annoys me like a real husband. So I was like,
It was easy.
It was easy. Come on, Nitin.
What was the name of that? I mean, there were two, so the catering company first that
Yes.
you started with money from Ian, Bill and Christian.
Oh gosh. Something with the word Masood in it. I have no idea.
Masala Queen.
Masala Queen.
And now, if I remember, that was where you had the market stall, wasn't it?
That is, but that was also Johnny Partridge's nickname on set.
Yes, Johnny. And I remember, do you remember the food? I just always remember the prop food because it used to be the cheapest microwave meals.
Yes.
Heating up the curries. They were disgusting. Because I used to always get excited as director because if you have a big food scene, you're so excited because you know, but no, that it's cheap, really cheap, all for food.
My favourite thing to do, and I'm a very proppy actor because I just think it looks more natural because I'm proppy anyway. Like I'm always, doing something with my hands. And anytime we had scenes, I would insist that at some point I'd have to feed or Nitin or give him a taste of something, and I would put so much extra chili powder in that bite. Every time, and every time he'd fall for it because he would eat everything on set.
In the end, you got the Argy Bargy.
Yes, we did.
Takeaway, which was basically, so most sets we filmed on, weren't there? The interiors were in a studio, but the Argy Bargy was outside.
That's right, yes.
And it was always bloody freezing, I remember.
Ice. In fact, it was always cold on that set. And I don't know if people know this, I think it was my year 3 or 4. No, it was towards the end of the Zainab stint. We had the domestic violence storyline. But there was an angry moment between Nitin and myself. So like Masood throws Zainab out of the house. And it was filmed in February. And it was freezing. It was one of the coldest Februaries we've ever had. And I was literally just in a very light kurta top and jeans or something. And I said to them, I went, we're filming this at night. It was a night shoot. I said, it's freezing and you're going to put the rain machine on. I said, I'm going to catch a cold. I was like, I'm going to die. This is horrible. And they're like, no, it's okay. We'll take care of you. And then we'll bring these hot coats and we'll give you hot water bottles and all this. I ended up with pneumonia for 2 weeks after that.
Oh my God.
It was so cold. And I just thought, never again.
No. And that set was just, I think that was my worst set to film in, actually.
Yeah.
It was just so hard to film in that set, wasn't it? Because, in television, basically sets are normally made very filmable. That kind of, they actually made the smallest Indian restaurant in the world.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Everything was small. And I hated those scenes where you had something on a doorstep because, you do the outside part of the scene sort of on one day and then maybe 3 weeks later, you do the indoor part.
Yes.
That's why when I made the fatal mistake of deciding that Zainab would have curly, unruly hair and wear no makeup, that went on for 6 years. It was horrible. I remember we had these scenes where you just go, oh gosh, I can't touch my hair, can't do anything because in 3 weeks I have to look exactly the same on the other side of the door. And there was one very funny moment which I have to tell you about, which was with Sid Owen. Sid Owen had done a scene. Then he'd had a 2-week holiday and came back and he was much more orange
I remember that.
on the inside of the house than he was on the outside 3 weeks later. It's genius.
And I can see why they do that, because obviously you do the outside first to see what the weather's going to be like before you do the inside.
Oh, is that
That's why you do
I
it.
just thought because it was in a different location.
No, it's because if it is, pissing it down, then you can be wetted up for the inside
I
stuff.
learned something new
See? Oh. So the Masoods were the first Asian family to go into EastEnders since the Ferreras in 2003, which was a bit of a disaster for EastEnders. And EastEnders had been at the time heavily criticised by the Commission for Racial Equality for not representing the ethnic culture. Do you think the Masoods played an important part in changing that? Yeah,
I think a massively important part. Because, they did their work. They did their research this time round. But they also, they were brave. Because, playing a Muslim character at the time that we did on screen, when there was all the stuff happening in central London with the, terrorists and the threats of bombs and this and that, it was actually a very scary prospect, And I remember kind of being told, well, we're going to be very true to these characters. We just have to make sure that we're culturally correct, this and that. And I said, well, I'll tell you what will help. Because this was my experience being an ethnic actor in this country. I noticed that if I go up for a job, 9 times out of 10 as an ethnic actor, they will say they're Muslim or they're Hindu or they're Parsi or they're whatever, whatever the religious context is. and then they'll tell me about my character. Whereas if they get a white actor, like my friend Janet Dibley, she played Steve McFadden's sort of alcoholic girlfriend.
She was in one of my favourite sitcoms ever with Nicholas Lyndhurst.
Oh my God, the two of us.
Yes!
I remember that. She was brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, she said to me, that's so interesting that they called you up and said they want to create a Muslim family. When I got called up, they said, can you play an alcoholic?
Right,
And I said, well, see, that's the difference. When you use ethnic actors, a lot of times it's not about the character, it's more about your cultural background. So I said, how about this time? Yes, great that she's Muslim, but let's not make that the thing. I said, tell me what she's like. Because that's what gets people interested. I don't think people watch it to have a cultural lesson about how to be a Muslim.
Yes,
they watch it because they want the drama. They want someone who, and I said, if you want to make her grumpy and unpleasant, fantastic. Because there is a fear sometimes also with ethnic characters of, they must be very nice people or this or that. And it's like, no. Just make it about the character, not about her culture.
Yes.
And I think that really helped for once. That really helped to just free us up to do what it is that we wanted. And then the cultural stuff just gave it that extra kind of flavour.
And I think if you don't, like you said, if you don't shove it in people's faces, it does open the conversation because then people go away and think, why did they do that?
Yeah.
I'm going to look why they did that.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than putting it on a plate for them.
Well, there was that whole talk of, when I first joined about would she wear a hijab? Would she cover her head?
Yeah. Because your backstory, to come into it, is really interesting, isn't it, Zainab? You were married to Yusuf and then had an affair with Masood and got set on fire by Yusuf, which is something that happened. Absolutely. And Masood rescued you. Yeah. So, it's a huge backstory to come in on that.
It's a fantastic backstory to come in on. And so, but I think that's why I kept the accent, because they were saying, well, I said, well, when did she move here? And they said, she would have been in her early 20s. So I said, well, then she wouldn't have a British accent. She would have a Pakistani accent. She would need that. Whereas Masood wouldn't, because he came from the UK. So there was that whole thing. We had to really think about where does she fit in. So I said, well, if she's had such a bad time back home in Pakistan with wearing the hijab and this and being very culturally strong, it would be great if she actually goes, I'm not going to do that in England. I'm actually still going to follow my religion and I'm still going to be strict on myself with the, the religious aspects of things. But as a woman, I'm not going to tie myself down with the hijab and this and that. I'll only do it if we ever seen in a mosque, which we did, and where I wore it and I was so hot and I passed out, for real.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was horrible.
And what do you think of soap? And I suppose we're talking about EastEnders now, because I think there's but I think it's a very hard balance, isn't it? Because it's the audience that watches. But say for in London now, I think there's a lot of Eastern European people. Yes. And there's not one Eastern European in soap. What's your viewpoint on where these programmes should be? Because it is fantasy.
It is, but
isn't it? But should it be reality?
It is and it isn't, because here's the fascinating thing. So when Michael Jackson died, they called us in quickly and they said, look, we're just going to add in a scene about him dying, and then they'll be on tonight's show. And they're so clever to do that. So they do bring in these elements of reality so people really feel it's happening at the time it's happening. So I think they do need to be a bit more relaxed and open-minded and just, be brave. Because they are brave with certain storylines. Yes, yeah. Especially storylines that affect women, I find, in very particular ways. They're very clever with that and they do bring those elements in. But I think they need to be a bit more realistic in that, if you are going to bring in an Eastern European person, to then actually bring an Eastern European actor in. Let them actually just enjoy and bring their flavour into the show. But one bit of advice I will give to anyone going in is that when I was offered this, it's important to watch it for at least 2 or 3 months before you go in, so that when you are in the show, you don't stick out like a sore thumb. Because it's one of those shows where if you haven't really watched it and understand how it works, you'll kind of almost have a different, not style of acting, but you'll have something that doesn't quite gel in the piece.
That's totally true. Yeah. I saw, I would do auditions with people who've worked in the National Theatre and stuff. They're amazing actors, but just couldn't fit in the show. Yeah. And I think you're right because of that.
It is. It's a very particular thing. It's a very raw show. And I think you have to you almost have to forget a lot of your training, to be honest. You just have to be real in it. You just have to say, this is what this person would do.
Yes.
And you just throw yourself
and
into
a lot
it.
of the time on soaps, isn't it? Very much a case of, I would say, on average on EastEnders, you got 40 minutes a scene.
Yeah.
And that included a read through, a block through.
Yeah.
And then getting it right, and then recording it.
Yeah.
And what you want is everyone on top of their game sometimes, and especially if someone's forgotten their lines all the time, then it's a nightmare to get a really good take, isn't it?
That wasn't a choice. I mean, like, literally, we were told from day one, you at the most get 2 or 3 takes, if that.
Yes.
Because
Oh, yeah.
9 times out of 10, they just want to get it done. It's a machine. You've got to move.
Yeah.
And I think I had a blackout. We have these blackouts when you've been in there long enough. I know Adam Woody had told me about this. He said that, you get this thing when you're really in it, where you'll just suddenly one day have a kind of blank moment. And it happened to me kind of 4 years in, where I remember walking on set and I was really exhausted. It was our storyline. I was just tired. And I remember sort of looking at, I think it was either I had my scene with Mark or with Johnny, and I remember just staring at them and then just bursting into tears because I couldn't remember anything. My mind just went, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to bed. And I just started sobbing uncontrollably because as an actor, that has never happened to me before.
Wow.
And I remember going into my little cubby hole and then,
So did you have to go off set?
Yeah, I had to go. I was sobbing because it was terrifying because literally I saw just white in my brain.
Wow.
No words came to my mind, even though I held the script and I was going, but I know this. I learned this yesterday. I know. And I'd also got to that point where I was not learning lines anymore. I could look at the script on the day of it arriving and going, yeah, it's fine. And it could be 3 or 4 pages.
Wow.
So your brain does something very weird as well when you're in that kind of learning mode where you don't learn your lines anymore. You just remember them.
Process them.
Yeah. You do. You process them and then you've got to get them out. As soon as you've learned them, you've got to forget them to let the new information in.
Yeah. And then what's it like as an actor? Because one of the big things we did Christmas, which was the kind of a massive part of the Yusuf Zainab thing when he was trying to take her back to Pakistan and she tried to get Camille away. Do you remember we filmed in that awful cafe, Boring Wood, as we call it, Boring Wood, High Street for hours and hours and hours. Which I was used to actually sitting there hungover having like sausage, bacon and chits, so it was really weird filming there. But I mean, what's it like? I mean, that was a huge, important story, obviously.
Yeah.
But how can you separate? I mean, because like we said, it's long days on EastEnders.
Yeah.
You come home and learn the lines. Can you switch off when you're doing a massive story like that? No,
and it's one of the biggest complaints that my family had, especially my husband, and this is no joke. It got to a point sort of, when you first start the show, it's all exciting, it's really fun. And in fact, I was playing a character that they brought in to bring humor into the show. So in my first couple of years, it was great fun. Zainab was just a funny character and my spirits were very high. When the domestic violence storyline started, I just genuinely was very depressed. The relentlessness of the negative storylines and the fear, even just playing fear, you're doing something to your body and your mind that's quite upsetting and quite emotionally kind of draining and negative and horrible. And you do bring that home. Yeah. And I would come home, I would be depressed. I didn't want to eat dinner with my family. I was too tired. I just wanted to go to bed. Everything my husband did irritated me. My kids, they don't dare come near me. Honestly, I was
It's really
horrid.
hard, that, isn't it?
And you don't, you just think, oh, yeah, I'm sure that happens. But actually, it does happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the thick of it, it really does happen. And although it's exciting because you've got such meaty stuff to play, at the same time, you're thinking, I can't do this. If I was playing a very morose, dry, dark character, you absorb some of that and you bring it home, and it's not fair to the people that you live with. It just isn't.
And do you think that's different in soap because it's so continuous? If that was a film or a one-off drama.
Yeah. Well, this storyline, I thought it was going to be like a 6-month thing that Yusuf comes back and then you find out her backstory. And then it went on for like 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's hard. Really
that
hard
was
work.
Very hard for me. And then after that, they were talking about, we'll bring the old Zainab back now. And I thought, how can a big domestic violence storyline, how do you expect it to be funny again within about 3 months' time? You can't do that.
No.
And it was a suggestion that I made that, I need to go away for a bit. Because if I go away, I can freshen up.
Yes.
And then you can bring her back and
Yes.
she can be herself again. But she's just sent a man to his death, in a burning house. And then you expect her next week to go, wasn't that funny, that fire down the street?
And I think I've talked about this with lots of the people I'm talking with, because actually in soap, I suppose there is that element of that has to happen to stay as a character there, because you think of, you know, Di Parish, who plays Diane Orr, you think of Gail Platt in Coronation Street, who's murdered about 3 people. And it's still kind of a normal housewife. But I suppose to have that longevity, then you have to do that, don't you?
You have to, and it's fine.
And you do just go away for a month to Scotland or whatever, and you come back a new person.
Absolutely.
Domestic abuse never happened.
Never happened at all. But what was really interesting as well was some fan mail that I used to get changed after. So the first 3 years I had lots of great fan mail of just, you know, oh, she's so funny, we love her, and I love how abusive she can be, and this and that, all kinds of really funny stuff.
Wow.
And then it suddenly turned to like when the domestic violence stuff happened, I had mail from, and there's one letter in particular really got me, a 17-year-old Pakistani girl who wrote to me to say, you gave me the strength to run away. I've run away from home because I was not going to be in this abusive marriage anymore. She'd been married at 15 in Pakistan. And she said, I watched your storyline and you gave me the strength to this. And you think, this is why you've got to be careful with soap. Although it's fictional, it deals with a lot of very real stuff. Hence the kind of, you know, you call this helpline if you need any help about a particular subject. So I think they need to tell the stories in a really clever way, which I think they do.
Yes.
I think Eastenders can get that really right.
I think when they get it right is when, and I've done, you know, we did a Cot Death on Emmerdale, you know, when I think the writers look at every single viewpoint that someone could have involved in that story and try to include it in the show through, so everyone can see it through someone else's eyes.
Yes.
Because I think that's the thing. Other dramas, because it's in everyone's house every day, people do believe it's kind of almost real, and that's why I think we've got that power in soap to change people's lives. I do think you can. Yeah,
very much so. And I think
but that's so much pressure as an actor for you. I mean, as a director, it's pressure, but I don't get that you're the front of it, aren't you? That's the thing with a show like that.
That's the thing that I think, you know, there was, again, one of the reasons I had to leave is because soap, when you are a recognised character, soap doesn't stop when you leave the set. Soap goes on. It's going on 10 years still after I've left. It never leaves you. You affected people because of whatever storyline, whatever they were going through in their life at the time. You affect people in a very particular way. And so I think there's a great responsibility that goes with that, which a lot of actors, I mean, I'm glad I went into the soap, you know, in my 40s, because I don't think I would have done, actually no, I was in my late 30s at the time. I don't think that I would have been prepared for it as a younger actor. Hats off to the younger actors who come out and still are okay, because no, it's a very dangerous point to take someone into a show like this. You are literally a person's neighbour or a friend, or they start to be your friend in their head.
I think the minute you go on screen in a soap, your life totally changes.
Oh, entirely,
doesn't it?
Entirely.
And I think the thing about television and film and everything is that people see it outside as very glamorous, and actually it's totally the opposite.
It's exactly the opposite.
The pressure and I mean, it's still, you know, it's a great job, but the pressure I think is immense in soap. It's almost like a Hollywood. I mean, I think it's that big for people, isn't it?
It is, and you know, if you just think about, so the only time it's glamorous is if you go to an awards ceremony with, you know, your gang. Yeah. And then you really feel a part of it. You really feel like I'm part of something very special and iconic and amazing. But the rest of it is a machine. You know, it's if you think 9 to 5 job, forget it. This is 8 to 8 job. Yeah. And it is hard. You know, it's not glamorous. There's many hours. Sometimes you can have a scene at 7 in the morning and then have another scene at 5 in the evening. And then you're sitting in the meantime in your little porter cabin going, what do I do with myself apart from learn more lines? And
that's what would drive me mad. Thank God you don't have that as a director. Yeah, that's when I go, oh my God. You know. And also, you know, you do a scene from, what always gets me is how amazing actors are in soap is you're not filming everything in the right order. No. You're filming 10 episodes, whatever, at the same time and going from... So mapping your journey so hard because you can totally balls it up as well. Well,
when I used to get my, you know, weekends off, I never had weekends off because my weekends were when I got my next lot of scripts. I'd be going, okay, and that's my schedule. So now I've got to know, oh, I'm doing, you know, this scene where she gets...
I'm going to cry in that.
Exactly.
I'm going to know,
Yeah, and you have to map it out. And sometimes you kind of go... oh gosh, you've done, and you get different directors. Yeah. So sometimes you can say, look, I did this really large, I did this really big, but you're doing the scene before that. And the director's going, no, I want you to really
Yes.
underplay. And you go, well, I can't because like 10 seconds later, I'm screaming my head off. So no. And there's all these things that you have to manage. That's why you have to be really good on your homework at home. And I think that shows with certain actors. I think it shows when people have really put their minds to it and done their work.
Well, I think the best episodes when everyone's done their work. Because as we know, there's lazy directors. There's lazy, you know.
Oh, yeah,
and if
yeah.
everyone's put it in, it can be magic.
Oh, then it's hugely magic, yeah.
So we've talked about Zainab, let's talk about you. So you were born in Bombay.
That's right.
And until you were 9?
Until I was 9, that's right.
And so was acting, I mean, you were young then.
I did Bharatanatyam, which is an Indian classical dance. I was obsessed with dance.
Right.
My background in entertainment does not come from any passion or whatever love for acting. It was purely dance. And it's from a very tiny age. My mum remembers if there was ever music around, I would, even as she said, as little as 18 months, I'd be sitting somewhere, if music was on, if I couldn't, physically do something, I'd be banging my head in rhythm to something. I remember flying back to the UK, age 18, and just dreading going up to my mum and going, I've decided what I want to do for a living. And the last thing she expected me to do was go, I want to be an actress like this. Do you want to what? I said, I want to be an actress. Why? It's a terrible profession. It's one step up from prostitution, for God's sake.
I think everyone's parents would say that, though.
Yeah, especially at that time, from the Bollywood background, it was like, no, you don't want to be an actress. That's a bad profession. That's a naughty profession. And I was like, well, actually, Mum, I don't want to do Bollywood. I want to do Shakespeare. I want to do the classics. I want to do Wilde. I want to just, And so she was completely thrown, and she didn't talk to me for 3 months. She was like, you're going to do law. You're not doing this. And we had a massive row about it. And literally we're in the same house, she wouldn't talk to me. And then finally my brother, sort of said, look, I've seen her. You've got to understand. He says, me of all people, I wouldn't say this, but I'm saying to you, this is something special. So then I auditioned for, God knows how many drama schools, can I just tell you? And finally one responded and said, yes, you can come for an audition. And it was this place in Richmond called Actorcise. Oh, it was awful. It was just awful. And it was run by a man who ran off with all our money after the second term.
No.
It was awful. And then, I remember turning up for my second term going, what's happened to the school? And it was boarded up and all of our students are standing up there going, and we'd laugh as well because it was the kind of school, it was opposite Richmond Bowling Green. And so in the middle of a scene, you'd have someone knocking on the door going, can I use the toilet, dear? And you'd be going, huh? What? What's happening?
I wonder if he's seen you now.
Yeah. Well, he got caught, that guy, by the way. His name was Stuart Gadotti, and he got caught because he tried to set up another school in Swansea and he got caught there. But then
they would have known him from the name. The worst name of an acting school ever.
Oh, gosh.
That must have set you up. I mean, as an actor anyway, as you know, you say you audition for loads of drama schools, but auditions, you can audition and think you're the worst actor ever. Yeah. I suppose after a month, if you've not got some.
Absolutely. And also, I wanted to go to RADA. In fact, if I'm not mistaken,
but you went to Actorcise.
I did I did a summer session there. And that was on a scholarship basis because we couldn't afford to send me to school because I had to pay overseas school fees and my parents just didn't have the money for it. I thought it was their ploy at the time, to stop me acting, but genuinely there was no money. And then when Actorcise kind of disappeared, what was the London Theatre School in Wandsworth, a woman called Barbara Buckmaster came up to school. She'd seen one of my performances at the school and she took 2 people from our drama school for free into her school, and I was one of them.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I did a year and a half with her, and then I just said, that's it. Stage newspaper, took the stage newspaper, turned the back of it and went, I just auditioned for everything. I also naively remember going up for review girls, not realising it was for strippers. Why am I in Soho in Raven's Review, but what's this for? What's going on? So, yeah. I was thrown into the profession in a really, I genuinely was incredibly naive about the profession. I didn't know any actors. I knew nothing about the profession, nothing.
I don't think anyone does really, though, who's gone into that.
No, now they do. But
I suppose now, you can do a lot on your first big, so I suppose the first big thing that everyone knows you for is Goodness Gracious Me.
Well, yes, but that was 7 years later.
7 years
My
later.
first ever job was at Theatre Royal Stratford East.
Which is amazing.
Our best theatre ever.
Yeah.
For me, it's the best theatre ever. And I worked with Jeff Tier and Philip Headley, and I did a panto. It was my first ever job, was panto, in which I had to tap, because that's why I went for it.
With bells?
With bells on as well. Oh God, don't. That's what we did pre-goodness gracious me. So I did that. And then after that, I literally did theatre job after theatre job. I went from one to the one.
And that's where you learn your craft,
7 years.
isn't it? That's where you really... Theatre's just that you can't...
Back-to-back theatre.
But how funny, goodness gracious me, when that came up was back to sketch, that you had started writing sketch. So
absolutely. And that came about because at Theatre Royal Stratford East, I was sitting in the green room going, you know, I always get the girl next door, the best friend. I never get to show what I can do. I'm always a support actor. And Philip Headley was the artistic director at the time there, said... No, that's a character actor. And he says, and you must know that about yourself. He said, you are a character actor, which, you know, when you're younger, you go,
you think,
no,
what?
I'm a lead.
I'm a leading lady.
I'm a leader. But it's a brilliant thing he said to me, because
Yes.
actually he's right, because what I was doing was character acting. And I thought, and he said, if you just embrace that, he says, you just accept that and embrace that. He goes, you go a lot further than if you keep thinking, I'll get Julia
Well, I think
Roberts'
you go
next
along
job,
further
you know?
than if you're say a Meg Ryan or a
Yeah.
who are basically
Yeah.
the same part,
Yeah,
really, but
absolutely.
leading ladies. But there's a lifeline to that.
Yeah. So I did that, and then he said to me, instead of sitting here, you know, bitching in the green room about how you don't get this, he goes, you said you write. I said, yeah. He goes, so get a bunch of people together. He says, I'm thinking of getting a group of young Asian actors together and see how you go. So they put 6 of us, this kind of mishmash group of people, which is where I first met Nitin, by the way. And we called our show, Do You Eat With Your Fingers? And,
I like that.
yeah, and we got together and co-wrote and co-performed and just, you know.
So is this the group that went on to Goodness Gracious Me? Or not? Yes.
Well,
yeah.
no. Just me from that group.
Just you, right? Okay.
So what happened with that group was they chose chose myself, and there's an actor called Paul Sharma. And
Paul,
Paul,
who also came into EastEnders.
Paul came into EastEnders to play
Nitin's
my
brother.
Exactly.
Yes, I remember Paul.
Now, Paul didn't. We then were asked by the BBC to go and do a one-off show at the Riverside Studios. It was going to be called Peter Sellers is Dead, but they never ended up calling it that. Thank goodness. They said no, it's actually going to be called Goodness Gracious Me. And so Paul and myself in that show. Paul's a tapper, and he can tap way better than me, by the way. And he basically. I choreographed a routine where I had bells on, but would do tap movements, and his top half of his body had to learn to do Bharatanatyam, and we combined this dance.
Oh, wow.
And that was one of the things that used to bring the house down. And he was going to come on to Goodness Gracious Me. For some reason, he decided it wasn't for him. I still to date don't know why. So then it ended up with the real McCoy people. So we had... Kulvinder Gear, who also Kuli I'd worked with in radio.
Oh, okay.
So I knew Kuli from radio and known Nitin from radio before that as well. Because in that first 7 years of acting, I trained on the radio drama company as well. And my audition for that is a classic. I have to tell you about that later. But anyway, so next thing I know, we perform in front of, the BBC execs. And we were told, you've got a radio slot to do Goodness Gracious Me. It's going to be a radio show. And luckily I'd done radio, so I flew in that, loved it. And then next thing, it was so successful so quickly, the listeners loved it, that they said within a couple of months, right, it's going to be a TV show. And that's when I panicked, because my only TV experience up to that point was one episode of 2.4 Children.
Right, okay. I saw that on your CV, actually. I used to love that as well. What were you in 2.4 Children?
I played...
Because that was humongous at the time, wasn't
huge.
it? That was like
huge.
the biggest show. I mean, if you look at it now, it was terrible.
It's an awful show.
Awful.
But, lovely actors, and we laughed. And I had one scene as a supermarket counter girl selling olives with Kim Benson, who played the plumber in it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The female plumber in it. And we got to be good. We're still very good friends now. And so that was my first and only ever TV experience, and I did not
Hated
like
it,
it.
right,
I'm a theatre girl, so next thing I know, they're going, oh, it's going to be TV. So I used to go early and sit in and learn from the cameraman, from lighting, the sound, blah blah blah, so that because it was multi-camera, goodness gracious me, and a Friday night live. Now the Friday nights I loved because I was used to an audience.
So you recorded it live to go out, did you?
We did,
yeah.
So, of course, there were certain sketches on location.
Yes,
we did.
yeah.
But I would say 70% of the show was a live sketch show.
Amazing. And that must be like theatre in a way, isn't it? Because you ignore the cameras and you just have the audience again, yeah.
Absolutely. And so we again, that happened. And then I flew out to Canada because my sister had married a Canadian, as happened. So I went out to see her. That's where I met my now husband, who's also Canadian. And when I came back, because he'd asked me in Canada, he was like, so what do you do? I said, I'm an actress. He goes, oh, you're a famous actress. I went, God, no one knows who I am. Flew back to England. Goodness gracious me, it just aired. And I'm in central London, people going, oh my God, and you're from Goodness Gracious Me. And I'm thinking, huh? What's happening? Within a year, it's like people were just
You were household names.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was literally like that.
And to all of you, I mean, that was the same. And do you find, I mean, I've got other actor friends who then have their friend, but their arch enemy who goes for every part. Were you and Mira Sayal then kind of almost up for everything together or not?
Not at all. Because I had a theatre background. So I came from, and she kind of came more from a literary background.
Right.
So and also she's 10 years older than me. So we were not really
Never
up
in
against
competition with each other.
We weren't. And we, you know, when we did Goodness Gracious Me, it was really interesting because I think initially it was only going to be Mira. And then they saw me in Do It With Your Fingers. So I got taken on at the very last second to join the group because they said, we can't find other women who are doing comedy. So I was taken on and they'd already come from Real McCoy, Cully and her.
Yeah, so they already had
But Sanjeev lived around the corner from me in Hounslow and he actually had come and seen me at Do It With Your Fingers at Theatre Royal. And he was performing with Nitin Soni across the road at the Tom Allen Centre doing a show called The Secret Asians.
Oh, wow.
And he'd approached me and written me a really funny note saying, I likes your legs or something like that. Something stupid as like pretending to be a 15-year-old playing a kid. So I went to see his show and then he said, look, I'm doing a one-off special. Would you join us as a kind of special character?
Wow, so that's...
I got seen by Anil Gupta and Sharat Sardana, the main guys from Goodness Gracious Me, at the Oval House initially.
Oh my God, it's such a...
It was pure luck because I was really ill that day and I almost didn't perform with Sanj. But I did because I promised him I would and I felt really guilty that I wouldn't. Thank goodness I did because that's where I got seen. So then I said, I'm doing this show called Do It With Your Fingers. And then they came to see that show as well. And that's how I got into that. And
did the fame thing frighten you when you started to get recognised? Was that?
It was exciting.
It was exciting.
Oh my gosh, no, I can't lie about that. I was like, hi, my name's Neha.
No dark glasses, no disguise.
Are you kidding? I was like, desperate for people to go. Yes. Sorry, hello.
With a Goodness Gracious Me t-shirt on.
Exactly. Kiss my chuddies written across my back. Those first 2 years were so exciting and so fun.
But reading your CV, I mean, it's amazing. You've done so much. You did The Vicar of Dibley.
Yes, I did Vicar of Dibley.
Who were you in The Vicar of Dibley?
I played a woman who worked at the council.
So did you get to work with Dawn French?
Yes, I did. Yes. Yeah, I had one scene with Dawn.
When you work with these other huge comedy actors and stuff, I mean, do you learn through your career that you will work differently? I mean, is it quite interesting? Is it interesting when you see another person who's made it, you know, to watch how they work?
They're very different. That's the one thing I know is that comedy, although everyone's doing comedy, their styles are different. And what's really interesting is I pick up a lot of new stuff. You know, I always find something in someone else that I think, gosh, that's so clever. Yeah. You know, and I'll kind of incorporate that into my next job. So you're always learning because that's the one thing that I was told that you must always learn. Never think you know it all about acting. You just never do anyway. No one ever does. So you always learn from the next person and the next person and the next person. And it's daunting. When I walk into did Still Open All Hours and you know you're going to be working with, you know, Sir David Jason, you kind of go, oh, I don't know if I can...
I know, that never goes away, does it, in this job?
It doesn't.
But you so get used to it when you work. I always find, once you've been there a week, I mean, on EastEnders, you know, my first block was the Fire Block.
Yes.
I remember Pam and June and you guys coming out and you're like, oh my gosh. But is it funny a week later?
Yeah, you're just friends.
friends.
And that's what's cool. What I do, that's the other thing I notice is a lot of big names are very generous actors.
Yes.
You know, so for me, it's always about teamwork. There's no point going, I'm just going to be really good in this scene and I don't care about anybody else because then the scene is just going to be crap, isn't it? So I learned that very early on in my theatre days, that if you want to have a good relationship and really, if you want the audience to really love what you're doing, you really need to love your fellow actors because then it comes to life. And that's what I liked about the Masoods. You know, you saw us on set.
Yeah.
We were inseparable, and people made fun of us.
I remember being shocked because you were all the totally opposite of the characters, which seems funny to say, but you kind of do. I mean, even I still class myself as an audience member sometimes. You do kind of come in with preconceptions.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought, they will never drink alcohol, and like the Masoods. I remember one of the first stories you said, I thought, I don't think she's anything like Zainab. Oh, well, then Pam St. Clement obviously was. Yeah. Hello, darling. When you meet her, you think, so God,
so posh. And in fact, I found that on that set, this was an interesting thing about a set, because not everybody is friendly to you from the beginning.
No.
And it's a funny thing that Pam said to me one day. I was like, I've been here like 8 months and you haven't really spoken to me. She's like, I'll see if you last first, darling, and then we'll get in touch. I'm like, what?
I know.
I found that really rude. But
and I suppose looking at that now, because
way.
she's seen so many people come and go, you do become. I mean, I used to feel really rude to extras because you had so many casts. You used to just ignore the extras. And I used to come home thinking, God, they must think I'm so in love with myself that you just almost ignore them. Because then I remember we got told as directors, there was a new rule that came in that said if you spoke to them, they got paid more.
Yes.
Then it made it even worse. So if they came up to you, you just had to blank them.
I know.
Oh,
I mean, we had to do scenes with them where I was working in that Minute Mart and someone would buy something and they just nod and you go, "Are you mute? Is everyone mute?" It's like, but they're like, "No, I can't talk because then they'll have to pay me more." And I'm like, "So say thank you then."
Yeah, quickly get it in. Yeah, do a whole speech. So then there's so much we can talk about in British television. You've recently, just to highlight some things, you were in the Guy Ritchie's remake of Aladdin, which I actually watched the other day.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, with Will Smith. I mean, obviously it's for a lot of special effects and stuff. What's Hollywood like?
It's really weird working on movies with kind of Hollywood people, Hollywood directors, because I went out and did pilot season for a couple of years out in LA and worked with Anders Holm.
And you've done Bennett like Beckham and stuff, so you've done lots of films. Is there a marked difference?
Yes, it's not as friendly.
No, that's what I know. Because obviously, as a director, I think you always have ambitions going to Hollywood. And I remember an actress saying to me, like, never leave soap. She said it's the most control you'll have because as a director in Hollywood, you'll also have the producers, the money makers who will all be going, no, she should sit down, no, she should stand up.
There are so many people telling you what to do and everything else is more important than your actual acting.
Right,
so by the time you actually get onto the set, finally, you've not only been kind of preened to death, you've been, told exactly where to stand, what the market is.
And have you met anyone at that point? Have you met? No.
Thus far, only the first AD and everyone in the background. And then Guy walks on, and then he was lovely, in fairness to me, and luckily he knew me from Goodness Gracious Me, which was a huge bonus.
Nice, yeah.
And I liked the little character, and he just kind of went.
I suppose the directors, they are just as famous as the actors, I suppose, in a way. Yeah.
I mean, especially him, it's like, and also when you have a crush on someone like that, you're like, which I did hugely, so I was like, oh my God, it's Guy Ritchie. Inside of me, like I was like a 12-year-old child. But you have that, and then of course he'll come in and then he'll give what his take is on it, and he wanted me to constantly be on the props and not even look at Aladdin. But at the time when we did it, because that's not the whole scene in the movie, that's half what the scene was. Aladdin had this metal pole on his shoulder with a red dot, which is where the monkey was meant to be.
Right.
So he said, refer to the monkey when you throw the dates at him, and all of that's been cut, sadly. So there was so much.
Maybe you were throwing it to the other side.
Knowing me. And so you do all of this kind of stuff, and then you realize next thing someone's actually said action, and you've gone, oh, what?
Oh God! Oh God.
So what's going on? And it was terrifying because it happens very quickly. It's all very, we got to get it done, and you just know there's a lot of money on that set. Yeah,
there's so much money every second being spent.
And that there's some American 17 producers watching you and every move. So if you don't do well in this, you'll never work in Hollywood. So the pressure is 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing about my career though. The one thing that I've never ever done is said no to a job because it's too small.
Yes.
For me, when I started, I remember kind of speaking to other actors going, how do you do this? How do you get a job? Because everyone would go, well, you can't get a job without an agent. And I go, well, how'd you get an agent? Oh, you need a job. You can't get an agent. Thinking, what?
What?
This is so messed up. This is a chicken or the egg. What do I do? So I just wrote off to everyone, hoping...
you just have to do it all yourself, and I think you always do.
You do.
Because
60
everything
agents
changes
I wrote
so
to.
quickly now. You know, like this we're doing ourselves.
Yeah.
But so would you, I mean, saying that then, no job's too small, I mean, can you actually imagine a life full-time in Hollywood? I mean, so many actors have come back, English actors, going, I did it for a while. Actually, it's, you know, it's too much.
I was out there for 2 years. One pilot didn't get picked up. One pilot did get picked up. But when the pilot got picked up, I was not very well actually for a bit. So I had to pull out of that,
right.
which was very gutting for me.
I bet,
really gutting, because it would have meant, okay, LA would have just happened for me.
Yeah.
But I realized actually, especially with the kids, you know, that's the other thing. If you're balancing children
And
a
marriage,
family and a marriage and a career, you've got to do what's best for everyone. And for me, I think falling ill was actually a stress-related thing because I was worried about their education as well. I looked at schools out in LA, and I'll be honest with you, I just didn't think it was right for my kids.
No,
I mean
LA's
it's a very. If I was single, I'd be out there like a shot.
God, yeah.
That would be
same.
me done.
Yeah.
But as a family-oriented person, I mean, I'm. Don't get me wrong. This is not the end that way.
No.
I still am excited about it.
Yes, yeah.
And I think once they're off at uni, my kids, you know, they're 16 and 13 now. Once they're off at uni, I think I might do that. But having said that, since kind of going, I don't know, more Hollywood has come my way in the UK than anywhere else.
Well, because so many series in it. It's not just Hollywood film now.
You can live anywhere you want.
Who would have thought Julia Roberts would do a series years ago? You know, like the world is constantly changing in our industry.
So now I know for a fact that I have an American agent, I have a British agent. I can work from here.
That sounds so fancy just saying.
No, but I worked hard for that, believe me.
Yeah, I bet you did.
The meetings you go for with Hollywood agencies, so different to the UK. So very briefly, here's a little scenario. You go to Hollywood meeting.
Did you meet any, like Joey's agent in Friends? Do you remember her?
Yes, oh my God, did I ever.
Really?
And one was, she was like, oh, you do great in porn. I'm like, I'm not here for porn. She's like, your tits are fabulous. I'm like, what? No, what have I come to?
Oh my God, amazing.
No, I did then also meet very, very good agents. But every meeting was, oh, we love your CV. Oh my God, you're so talented. Oh my God, you know, you've got
amazing.
This. You've got this behind you. You can do comedy, you can do drama. Oh my God, we'd kill to have you. And every meeting, cut to the opposite in the UK, where you walk into a meeting and go, oh,
is this all you've done?
What is it? Who you worked at Theatre Royal Stratford East? Oh, so not Theatre Royal in the West End then? Okay, fine. You know, like, I've been here 30 years and you just still look at my CV
well,
like...
you had a break for a year.
Yeah. What did you do there? Oh, well, I had a child.
Yes.
Oh, you didn't go back to work in 6 weeks? So entirely different.
Yeah.
But the American, the agent I finally signed with, I love, and they're very proactive and all kinds of things. But when, you know, like when I made this decision, of course, they were a bit upset with me, to say the least. But I had to do what was right for me.
Yeah.
But I also had to go out and try. And I also had to kind of enjoy that experience.
I think in this
excited.
industry, everything happens for a reason. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
You know, because jobs, you know, for me as well, there's never, ever a time that two jobs don't come up at the same time. And then you have months off.
Always happens. And it's so gutting.
So hard. And it's so hard to decide. It really is. But I think your gut normally just instantly tells you.
It does. But I think the other thing I've also trusted, because I've trusted my gut more and more, I tend to only do something for as long as I want to do it. I mean, leaving Eastenders was one of the hardest decisions.
Because it could have been a job for life, couldn't it?
It could have, and it still can be. The nice respect that they gave me was they said, we're not going to kill you off. Because I asked to be killed off. I said, because I thought I'd get a massive storyline if I get killed off, which I would have. But it would have meant I couldn't go back in. So they said, no, we're not going to do that. We want to leave the door open for her because she's a great character. So I thought, well, that's respect shown back to my hard work, which was very nice.
Which they don't do for everyone, so that is totally respect.
It was huge.
Yeah.
So once I left that, I suddenly had this freedom to kind of go, do you know what? I'm just going to try anything now.
Yes.
So now I've done that. I'm going to try. I'll go up for some dramas. I'll go up for whatever. And he did it, and it's been interesting because Still Open All Hours sort of came back. We had a goodness gracious me reunion again,
which we will quickly talk about actually while you're on it, because is that, I mean, a totally different kind of comedy, isn't it? Because it's going back to
entirely
like the original. Does it still work? I mean, it does. It's got the audience.
It does.
Is it strange going into something that is, I think, unique nowadays. There aren't many sitcoms like that.
Well, it's very iconic because, I mean, I watched Open All Hours. I sat and I watched it, and I remember thinking, how do I make a character like Mrs. Hussain fit into that world?
Yes.
Because that was the idea. They were updating it. So it wasn't Doncaster. It was still there. It's still in the original shop. It's still filmed there. But of course, you know, there is a Muslim community out there, and you just kind of go, but I don't want to stand out in a really negative way.
No. And especially that it was filmed and the style of it was very much the same as it was. Because like we said, 2.4 children.
Yeah.
Would that work now?
No.
Probably not.
No.
But that has.
That has. And it was interesting. So when the character was written, she was written as a one-off for the Christmas special. She was literally like 2 lines in the Christmas special. And I remember meeting Roy Clark and thinking, legend of a writer. I was like this, just bowing down to him. I think he's unbelievable.
Amazing. He's keeping up appearances as well, isn't he?
Yes, he's incredible. And how he just keeps coming up with more and more and more. And he said to me, he goes, don't worry about the character. Like, don't worry about what she looks like or this or that. He said, she's a gossip. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just went against my own rule. You know, which was tell me about the character. And the character is, she's a gossip. So I thought, okay. So then, you know, I just need to make her really quirky and slightly odd and weird and just about what's going on in the street.
Yeah.
So I did it like that. And next thing I knew, they said, would you like to be in the series?
Amazing.
And I thought, I'm so blessed that they saw what I was trying to do. So that was very exciting because then that happened. And then off the back of that, like there was just oh my God, I can't remember. Oh, Death in Paradise.
Yes, which is amazing, where you get to go to...
Who says no to that?
Yes.
But I was, you know, about 5 years ago, they came for me when it was Chris Marshall doing it. And it was a storyline about, like, I think a hen do with a bunch of girls going out. And I couldn't do it. I was doing something else at the time. So I was like, oh no, I'm gutted. I can't do it. It's filmed in Guadalupe.
And I remember the beginning of that series, there was a big complaint about the sound, that no one could ever hear the sound. And I just thought, was that because everyone was just constantly drunk?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you cannot do a show like that and not drink rum from 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. It's a beautiful setting.
Bet.
I mean, genuinely is paradise. It is paradise. And, you know, I got so lucky that I get a storyline with one of my comic heroes, who is Ardal O'Hanlon. I was like,
oh, amazing.
What? I'm playing his love. I'm like, yes,
that's
bring
brilliant.
it up. It was just incredible. I just thought this couldn't be a nicer job. In fact, I remember my agent going, hey, you remember you couldn't do Death in Paradise last time? I went, yes.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
And she went, well, and I went, I'm doing it. What is it? I don't care what the part is, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Because every actor does it. It's so smug about it. They're like,
oh no, they are everywhere. And directors, like no director, you go, I'm just going back for the next series.
I know,
it's
it's a stunning location.
And you've also done Bollywood.
Oh, yes.
Haven't you? Now, I've had a friend, to tell me this, I had a friend, she's Australian, and her name's Tanya, and she got cast in a couple actually in the end. She played kind of the white girl who came in to mess things up.
Yeah.
But she got paid like in brown envelopes, cash.
Yeah.
And basically it was, I mean, we don't realise over here, I think, how big that is. When she was over there, she'd have whole floors of the hotel taken over for her.
You are treated like a god. I mean, it is a different entity. But look, I come from Bombay.
Yes, so you were used.
For me, I kind of looked at it as... Bollywood had been asking me to do stuff for them for a very long time.
Yeah.
I never had an interest in it because for me, Bollywood film is panto. Okay? It's panto. It's singing, dancing, whatever. And they take certain things very seriously that I laugh at.
Right,
so I just
it's hard to do it.
Yeah, I can't take it to it. But the part was really cool. And this part, and to work not
and
only with Akshay Kumar in Namaste London, not only with Akshay Kumar as a massive legend, but I played Rishi Kapoor of the Kapoor dynasty's wife. Now, the weird thing is, my son-in-law Akshay is 2 years older than me, okay? So I had to really age up. Also, I found out I was pregnant with my second child in real life when I was doing the film. So I had all these different things going on, but there were great things about it, but there were also things where I thought, nah, I can't do this again. And what it was one particular moment, which may not mean much to a lot of people, but to me, it was just, I can't believe this just happened. I'm standing on set and it was their equivalent. I always say the equivalent of a first because you actually don't know who's running the show.
Right, okay.
You have random people come and talk to the person next to you to tell you what to do because they're a man, and you go, "Huh?" They go, we're not going to talk to you because we can't talk directly to you. You're the woman. What? what's going on? And I don't know if they're joking. I don't know if it's real. I don't know what's happening. I wasn't given a trailer because I'm a British actress.
Wow.
So, and I'm one of the 4
And
leads.
is it the same production values of, say, a Hollywood film? Is it huge? I mean, is it...
It is, but it's, if your call is 7 a.m., sometimes the actor turns up at 11:30.
Right, okay.
There's no consistency. And
Right.
sometimes the director might go, actually, you know what? I don't feel like doing this scene today. And I'm like, so it's chaos. It's total
right,
chaos. But I was
okay.
expecting that,
Yeah.
and that's fine. And you get dubbed. Whether you...
Oh, really?
The sound man is the most pointless man in Bollywood because nobody cares. Sometimes he hasn't even pressed record. And they're like, it's okay, we're dubbing it anyway.
Maybe he did Death in Paradise.
Probably did. But you're just going, so it works in its own, we call it Bollywood time. But there's one moment this guy comes up and, I did the kind of, I had a little kind of funny comedy moment. And, people laughed on set and then we kind of did the actual recording. And I said, oh, can I watch it back in the rush? I want to see if the timing worked. And he went, why? We'll just put the doing. I said, I beg your pardon. He goes, well, it was a comedy line, you have to put the doing. I said, what's the doing? And he goes, you've not seen Bollywood films? When the comedy character comes, they do
effect.
They actually put a doing. He goes, and then he says, otherwise, how will you know if it's funny? I thought, that's why I don't do Bollywood.
That's insane.
It is great. It's an entirely different world.
But huge.
It's huge, but it's not for me. I struggled with...
And were you paid in a brown paper
I was.
envelope? Well,
I was. Yeah. You get... it's random as well. They'll sometimes go, okay, you can hang out at your hotel till then, or okay, come at this time, or like I said, you don't get a trailer because you're considered a British woman actress, Indian from the UK, so you're not treated like the main Bollywood people, and it's wrong. Whereas you do a Hollywood film, you still get, even if it's a small part, you get treated really nicely.
Yes, yeah. Talent, I think, is still...
talent is talent at the end of the day. And they respect you whether it's one line or whether it's 5 scenes. They respect you. Whereas I just found in this, I was just not treated in a really proper way.
In a way that
then,
you would...
Is that because also there was a lot of misogyny going on? Because that's India for you anyway,
Yes.
generally.
Yeah.
And I'm not a quiet woman. You know me.
Yeah.
If I'm not spoken to with enough respect, I will say,
Yes.
who do you think you're talking to? I'm not a piece of shit on the road.
Yeah.
You will talk to me with respect. And they just look really
I love
shocked.
the idea of something here, someone saying to you, well, obviously, that will have the toy.
I would love.
That's the best I know. However, do you know if it's funny?
What I want to do.
Bollywood,
we should do it. Lee. What are we doing? Come on, let's do it. Let's do
There is room for that,
I'm serious. I mean, I'm up for it. I'll write it.
Yes, you've heard it here.
Okay,
that
done.
would be amazing.
I'll do it.
And one story that I remember with us that we have to mention is, do you remember we did the Children in Need thing with Coronation Street?
With the bump.
You had an Asian off with Shobna. Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
And then there was a brilliant scene. I think it was written by John and Harvey? I can't remember. There was a brilliant scene with Sue.
Mine was with Sarah.
You had a Sue Cleaver one about gays.
That's right. Yes, I did.
Which was brilliant. And just as we got there, because you were in the boot of the car, I remember, which was your idea, that Johnny had put you in the boot of the car.
That's genius.
Do you remember that? Do you remember what feeling? Because I remember then afterwards, I remember actually all the EastEnders cast were going, what are their dressing rooms like? Do you remember? Because they were gorgeous.
They were,
and obviously you were in a porter cabin, weren't you?
I know, we're always in a porter cabin.
I think the biggest mistake they made was letting EastEnders cast go to Coronation Street at that time.
They should have done that. They should have sent them to us.
Yeah.
And then they maybe could have campaigned for better rooms for us.
Well, they did send them to us, actually. And I remember it was just, you weren't, because you came up there, and then I did the day at EastEnders when Bev Callard, who played Liz, came with Jessie, and it was going Kim Martin. It was quite... Because it's quite weird. I mean, for me, it was so bizarre seeing soap legends together.
Well, the first time I did a soap awards, I remember people, or anyone on the red carpet, when they stop you, they go, so is it true about the rivalry between the two? And I, like an idiot, I joke about everything. I was like, oh God, yeah, we hate everyone. And next thing I know, it's in some soap magazine. Zainab says that Eastenders. I'm like, no, it's so
horrible.
I know, it's a joke. Jeez, there are a lot of them. Like Shobna, I've known. Shobna was in Do You Eat With Your Fingers.
Oh, was she?
Yes, she was in Do You Eat With Your Fingers. And she's a superb dancer, by the way. She's an amazing dancer.
Oh, she's really funny.
And she's very funny. She's great sense of humour. So there's all these, when the whole Korean this thing happened, I thought, is it a real thing? Is it not a real thing? I don't know. I don't take things like that seriously.
No, we couldn't. I mean, I was totally going, this is so weird.
It's ridiculous. All that drama they build up about all of this. And at the end of the day, actually, you don't have a closer friend than another actor in a soap.
No.
You just don't.
And everyone is normal. I remember Helen Worth, who plays Gail, who's been in Coronation Street for years, and it's one of those people when you join, you're like, oh my God, but she was absolutely petrified coming to EastEnders because she was like, oh my God, I'm on Albert Square. That's why it never goes away when you do things,
no,
does it?
it doesn't. It really doesn't.
And you still stay new and fresh.
Of course it does.
It's amazing every day, our job.
Yeah.
So, well, it's been amazing. Oh, I know, there's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about, actually, because there's so much we could talk about. One of the recent things you did was Isolation Stories with Sheridan Smith.
Yes, that's right, yes.
And so how do you think, I mean, in what we've gone through this year, what's the future for your, because as we all know, it's much harder to get a job at the moment.
It's very hard. As soon as the lockdown kind of eased off, I had a couple of self-tapes come in straight away. So I'm actually currently filming an ITV drama with Emily Watson called Too Close. So I'm doing that. I was working with Stephen Merchant on his new comedy, The Offenders, when everything stopped dead in March. So that's picking up in December.
Yeah.
And I've just auditioned for a new Netflix series, which I'm just waiting to hear if the dates can all work. Because the new problem is going from one job to another, you have to leave
have that,
7 days free, which meant
you're
that
like an Airbnb.
Oh, it's horrible.
That needs cleaning.
It's horrible. I mean, I'm doing Countdown next week, and of course I've had to move that date now. It has to be 7 days after I finish Too Close. And like you've said before, all jobs come in
the same
buses.
time, you can't have that luxury.
I tell you, just even the rehearsal, walking into that place with your mask on.
I know, it's lost its magic, hasn't it? Yeah.
Filming is not...
Well, as we know, it's about the fun, and it's about because that's what makes it kind of come alive, isn't it? And standing 2 meters away from everyone.
No, and we're a very touchy-feely industry.
Yes.
You're always hugging someone or sitting on someone's lap, or is that just me? But it's a very, when you bond with someone, there are no filters, and those people that you can bond with and be free with.
Yeah.
And you can't do that right now because everything is about the pandemic. Everything's about don't touch this, wear that, touch this, wash your hands. I've had these bloody cotton buds shoved up my nose and my throat and checking if I've got COVID right now or not. And it's not a pleasant place
It's become,
to be.
I think, clinical and, regimented, which this can't be, can it?
Filming can't be. And what about theatre? Where's theatre? Where's the love for theatre right now? And it's just, I'm so desperate. I know friends who are, have had to stop in the middle of everything. And I pray that everybody gets work. I know a lot of my friends are working currently.
Well, this country, theatre is part of our, soul.
It's the lifeblood.
It would be horrendous if theatre went. But so who knows when it's going. Well, thank you. I'm going to give you a little soap from the box. And the last question is, who would you have given that to in EastEnders, character-wise, to have washed away their sins?
Oh, to wash away their sins.
I mean, we could talk about the actors, but then we'd be giving too much away.
Just the character.
We'll be talking about that afterwards.
No, do you know what? I would give this as a laugh to John Partridge.
The masala queen.
The masala
himself.
queen deserves it. He's got a lot of masala on his hands at all times, so the soap would come in handy for him.
Well, thank you very much, Nina.
No problem.
Lots of love. Bye. Well, that's episode 2 of Soap from the Box. I really hope you're enjoying it. Nina is literally one of the funniest people I've ever met. I'll be back at the same time next week with another celebrity guest. And once again, all week, I'll be posting clues online as to who it might be that I'm chatting to. Here's your first clue. She had an on-screen romance with our guest from episode 1, Shane Ward. And if you haven't listened to that yet, listen to it now. If you think you might know the answer, give me a shout at Soap from the Box on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'd like to thank David Stevens and the Bothy for their edit and technical wizardry. You wouldn't be listening now if it wasn't for him. Rosie Baker-Smith for her social media help, and Orla McKibben for her press help. I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.